All right, class. Today we're going to talk about ed plans. Ed plans are a big part of making sure that you're set up for success as an engineering major. So here are some things to think about. What is an ed plan? First, let's start with that. Now, you might have already set one of these up, so you might know already, but just you can think of ed plans as just a quarter by quarter class list. Students usually start theirs on their own, and then you verify them with your advisor. And for engineering, I highly suggest that you also check it with me. For this class, I'll be taking a look at your ed plan and making sure that you meet all the criteria for transfer. I work really closely with the engineering institutions that we transfer to, so I want to make sure that you are getting the courses that you need to transfer. A question that I often get of why do I need this? Why don't I just decide my courses every quarter? The big part of it is making sure that you're ready for transfer. At South, remember for all of our engineering programs here at South, you're getting ready to transfer to a four-year institution to finish your degree. So you need to make sure that you take all the courses that you need. So when you get there, you only have 2 years of school. I don't want you to spend a lot of money at a four-year institution because you missed an important class and you can't move on until you catch up, right? So in engineering, there's a lot of classes that have prereqs or pre-requirements. What sort of things do you need to finish before you do this class? And the order of classes really matters. You need to finish some math before you take your physics series. You need to take your physics series before you will understand your engineering classes, your 200 level engineering classes. So you got to make sure that you are doing these in the right order so that you're ready for transfer and that you can finish all of your work, all of your important transfer work before you all of your important engineering major related classes before you transfer. Also, there's a lot of research that shows students that build these ed plans are a lot more likely to graduate. If you make an ed plan, you're just three times more likely to graduate. That's pretty big. So I want to kind of set you up for success. So ed plans are a big part of that, making sure that you're ready to transfer and that you graduate. All right, so the first part of these steps to build your ed plan is to think about whether you're going to be a full-time or part-time student. For students, that's a big choice of do you want to take 2 courses or 3 courses typically. Full-time students means that you don't have a whole lot of time for other things in your life, like doing a full-time job in engineering, and being a full-time student is really, really hard. So you want to think about what are your life circumstances and what works best for your schedules. Then I would say the biggest part is figuring out where you are in the math sequence, right? The math part is significant for engineers. We talked a little bit about what sort of math courses you're going to use and why that's important, how it's important to practicing engineering and your education also. Things I like to really suggest for students, and these are really, really good guidelines and you can avoid them whenever you can. Big thing is don't do more than 3 courses per quarter. For engineers, that's really hard because our classes get tough and there's lots of homework. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So in fall, winter, and spring quarter, make sure that you are only signing up for 15 hours. Typically, sometimes chemistry is more hours, but that's going to be 3 courses per quarter. That's really important. If you came from a semester system, that might seem like a small number, but just remember, we're fitting it into a very tight deadline, a very small amount of time. For summer quarter, these are short sessions. So you want to take less than 2 courses in the summer. 2 courses is full-time in the summer. Lab courses are a lot more work. I would say each lab course you can kind of think of as like a course and a half, because you have the lecture part and then you also have a lab portion, and both of those have different requirements and additional homework for lab parts. So just keep that in mind when you sign up for a lab course. You really want to try to take it 1 lab course a quarter. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. This is just some things that you may not know, but think carefully about that. The other thing that you have to remember is the sequencing. What are the prereqs? How does this fit in order? And we have some guidelines and some things to help you here. So you don't have to do this alone, but these are just things you want to think about as you go through this process. All right.
Now, there are lots of tools that can help you do this. One of the cool things that we have at MySouth is this tool that will allow you to create these. Now, there's actually because North and South Seattle College use the same system, North Seattle's created this really great tool that kind of walks you through this process. So you can figure out how do you figure out your program, what are your requirements, and there's some overlap. How do you figure out the right overlap of our courses? There's some more information about how to do that. In this case, you'll do all of this through the My Seattle Colleges. In this case, we'll be using MySouth. And in MySouth, that's where you can log in and do these ed plans. So right here, you see the ed plan tool. You can click on that and it'll ask you to log in using your student credentials. In this case, I can't log in because I'm not a student. They won't let me do it. But that's how you would get into the system and help build your ed plan. Let's talk about some critical details for that ed plan.
I thought we eliminated segregation in schools.
Yeah, they won't let me get in there. Unfortunately, they won't let me set up an ed plan. Apparently, once I get a master's degree, they don't let me take any more classes. I'm just kidding. I keep taking classes elsewhere, but
that's educationist.
So let's talk about math, where every student comes in at a different level, and that's absolutely fine. Our math pathway at South looks something like this, and it's always kind of changing a little bit. And I don't have all of the courses here. These are kind of the major ones. For a lot of students, depending on what your test scores are and your experience in high school, you might be in a different part of this. But a lot of students come in at the Math 98 and the Math 102 level. And that's absolutely fine. For our engineering students at a four-year institution, they often start here at Math 151. Now, that means that your educational plan might look a little bit different than if you have friends that started at calculus. And we all come in at wherever we are. That's absolutely fine. It might just take you a little bit more time to do those math courses and get to that Math 151 level. So if you're coming in at Math 98, you can take Math 98 and 102 together. Some of you are already doing that. If so, that's awesome. Or you can take Math 98 and sometimes you can score so well that you go right into Math 141. That's also an option. There's lots of ways to get to Math 141. Math 141 is pre-calc. There's 1 and 2. There's 2 parts to it because we do a quarter system. So it's kind of splitting up what usually is a semester into 2 courses. So it's a little bit different. After Math 141 and 142, you go into calculus. And typically the way that it works is you take 151, Calc 1, and then Calc 2. And then from Calc 2, you can decide where you want to go from there. And depending on your major, you might go straight to into Math 220 or 238. It just kind of depends on that process. For some institutions, you need all 3. For some transfer, you only need Math 1 and 2. I would say for a lot of our students, though, you can expect to take Calc 1, 2, and 3.
Since I'm seeking a computer science major, how many would I have to do?
We'll take a look at that specific questions like that in just a second. There's actually some really cool documentation that I can show you around that. So ask that question in just a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the math pathway. Any questions about these courses? I can talk about which ones you need in just a second. We'll look at some cheat sheets. We call these ed plans. There's some ed plans and pathways that are already created that you can use to get you started. So you don't have to start from scratch, which is really helpful. All right, so let's look at some prereqs here. So for our engineering and physics courses,
there are some prereqs that you need to finish first. So these are kind of the critical path, as I like to say. In construction engineering, they talk a lot about critical path. What is the order of things that are very important to making sure that you finish in time, right? These are the critical tasks. The big one is getting Calc 151. If you finish Calculus 1, you can take Physics 221. Calculus 1 is used in Physics 221 a lot because there's some relationships between velocity and acceleration and position, and understanding calculus really helps you understand how these things are tied together. So you have to take, at South, you have to take that first. So once you take 151, you take 221, that Physics 221, and then in the fall, there's a series that starts that's called Engineering 214. We call this statics. Statics is really important class for civil and mechanical engineers. And I would say electrical engineers can also take this course. It's really helpful for understanding AC power. There's some geometry that's very similar in the way that we do math in AC power. It sounds kind of silly, but it makes a lot of sense when you see it visually. But statics is a key course. So getting that enrolled in that course is really critical. And then in winter, you can take dynamics. That comes after Engineering 214, or you can take 225 in the spring. The order really doesn't matter, but this is the order that we offer them at South. Related to that, if you're electrical engineering or computer engineering, you would be taking circuits. Our circuits course is based off of Physics 222, so you need to finish that first. That Physics 222 teaches you about those basic components like capacitors and resistors and transistors a little bit. How do these things work on a physics scale, and how does electricity flow through these components? That's a big part of it. And then in circuits, we take it from there. How do you start analyzing circuits based off of what we know about the physics of them, right? One interesting course we offer here at South that's offered in the fall and spring that is totally an optional course, but I think it's a really fun application of engineering design is Engineering 115, should say 115. And that is a CAD course, but it also has CNC plasma. So if you ever wanted to cut out something with a CNC plasma, that's a plasma torch, really hot ionized gas, cuts metal. That's what Engineering 115 is for. And it's a course that you can take right after this one if you wanted to learn a little bit more about CNC manufacturing and design. At this point, you actually have a really big choice to make. So and this is a fairly new program. So a lot of you probably already know about the Associate in Science. AS Track 2 is a 2-year degree program, and it's AS Track 2. Track 2 is specifically engineering. So we have the AS Track 2 degree. The other option that we have, the other degree program that we offer here is the MRP degree. The MRP degree is really powerful for those of you, especially for a lot of our students that start here. And Math 98 or 102, you're probably going to fit a little bit easier into an MRP degree plan than a 2-year plan. That's what it's all about. So I would say if you're starting at math start of Math 98 or 102 or 141/142, any of those courses, if you're starting in those math courses, you're taking those now, that's where you're going to start. For the AS Track 2 plan, this is based off of the old Calc 1 start. And I would say most of our students don't fit into this box anymore. The cool thing about this is that all of those transfer courses that you need to transfer are part of the plan. If it's in your degree plan, it gets paid, right? If you have financial aid will pay for it. If you get a scholarship, the scholarship will pay for those courses. Students that take the AS Track 2 course plan often have additional transfer courses that they don't fit into the plan, so they don't get paid for. So I would say for a lot of students, I really would suggest looking at the MRP program to make sure that you're getting all of your courses paid for by your financial aid or your scholarships or grants or whatever funding that you're getting. The other cool thing about it is that in these plans, you're going to be taking one science per quarter maximum. So that's really great. The other thing is you're also ensuring that once you transfer, if you're transferring in the Washington state, anywhere into Washington state, I would say most of our colleges, major four-year institutions, are signed on to this MRP plan. So they'll take all of your credits and they'll guarantee that you graduate in 2 years if you pass all your classes once you transfer. So it's kind of a really great program in the fact that we've worked with those colleges to make sure that our courses will fulfill all of that. That's less of a depending on which courses, you got to be really careful about the way you set up your AS Track 2 to make sure you take the courses you need to transfer. I want to make sure that that's really, really clear here. I'm going to pause here for questions.